Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Star Wars Universe podcast. Today we are continuing our coverage of Andor. We're talking about Season 1, Episode 4. That has a title I don't remember, but if so, I would say in this very excited voice because I am so glad we are getting new Star Wars content and it is so good. All that more with myself and Paul the Lightsaber Hoppy. Right after this commercial break, we have no controller.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Matthew, your host. I'm joined by my not actually a real host, Paul Hoppy. Paul, you had a big announcement I just heard about your feelings about this show.
Oh, yeah, I guess that wasn't really intended as an announcement, but yeah, I like it a lot.
Nice.
I'm definitely gonna cover all of the episodes with you, which I to make clear to anybody who might think that not really a host was a slight. That is my insistence that I'm totally not a co-host. I'm just a very, very, very frequent guest.
Well, and we had given Paul the option, especially with these week-to-week shows, that like, if there are things that make the show something they really don't want to watch, that they could decide to just be our producer and I would have a different guest on, etc. So Paul, though, said to me earlier that they are okay just saying they're going to be on for every episode of Andor. So I really hope that does not jinx us and mean we're going to see the worst animal cruelty that we've ever seen on any TV show in the next 2 episodes. I don't want to see it. I don't know. Paul definitely doesn't want to see it. But we'll see what happens. Let's certainly hope not, though.
Yeah, I mean, we do have those sheep who could come to a horrible end. And, like, if all these people disappear, then, like, what happens to the sheep? But
that's a good question.
I kind of trust Tony Gilroy in that regard a little bit, in that there's a certain movie that a dog does ostensibly get killed off screen, but it is very much off screen. And it, like, kind of, it's not done. I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that are not done for the emotional manipulation, you know?
Is that a movie that has a certain candle as its main star?
A candle? An Asgardian actor. A candle.
Oh, okay. Wick.
No. That Tony Gilroy didn't write that. No.
To all the people who are yelling at us saying, please shut up and get back to Andor, let's please shut up and get back to Andor. Yeah. Episode 4, what'd you think?
I thought it was great. The only thing I really disliked about it was that it ended and I don't get to watch the next 8 episodes yet. So, yeah, it's just, I really enjoy how much the show is taking its time, how much it seems to trust the audience, the looks inside the sort of behind the scenes Imperial security stuff without, in this like very kind of mundane way, but not boring way. You know, like there's intrigue there, but it also is showing us like, yeah, if you're trying to do security for a galaxy, you know, there's a lot of paperwork involved. Although I guess they use these tablets, right?
Yeah. I want to start there because let me make 2 comments where one, I think I called it right, and one, I was completely wrong from last week.
All right.
One, having rewatched, as you pointed out to me, with a very low degree of smugness on your rewatch, Tim was absolutely trying to get rid of his rival for Bix. Yeah. So totally agree with you on that. Yeah. I just had to not put all the details together. But the other thing was that as I had said, I kind of felt like part of what we were going for is and in some ways continuing the trend I think they began with Krennic and the political infighting between him and Tarkin, was that we're going to deal with kind of like, as you said, the mundanities, the realities of bureaucracy and empire. And to me, this episode felt so much like it was about, bureaucracy and about the idea that, and here maybe I'm going to be kind of controversial, but this is what I was kind of saying last time as well. I don't think he's a good guy. Certainly not yet, and maybe not ever. But our main cop person, the one who was like upset that murders were just going to get kind of swept under the rug, and then he went all SWAT team, and then now he's kind of getting called on the carpet. I think he is supposed to be a character we have some sympathy for. Mm-hmm. And I don't know yet if this is, and yes, ACAB is always true, and certainly in this universe, he is working for an arm of a fascist government. I think that is definitely a thing. I think, though, what we're seeing is a person who he reminds me so much of, and I don't remember the names of either of these characters, but I think we can refer to him, is the cop in V for Vendetta.
Sure.
The one who winds up investigating V, and over the course of it kind of like figures out enough about the evils of the people he's working for that he decides to help V, if at least in a small way. I don't think this guy is going to, I don't want him to join the rebellion, but I think he is meant to be a person who thinks murder is bad and wants to catch murderers. And, he's a cop, and he's a cop for a terrible government, and I reject both of those things. But I think that he has some good intentions, and I have some sympathy for him about trying to do the right thing and getting smashed down. And I don't want to get expectations up, but I think we're going to continue to feel about him in a somewhat sympathetic manner. And I think he will either become a V for Vendetta cop, or he'll become a John Walker type, where he'll straight up become the villain, but in, again, not a sympathetic as being the villain way, but sympathetic of like, okay, I see where you get led down this path, and you're horrible, but I see how it happens.
Yeah, I largely agree with that. I think the cop, the detective, right, in V for Vendetta, I think is fairly different, because I don't think he really trusts the government overall, and I think he actually already has a very skeptical kind of negative view of it, despite the fact that he works for it. And like maybe he was a cop before, the fascist regime turned totally fascist. Like,
right.
Of course, there's already issues with that. But like, I do think, if you have some sort of police force to do literally one thing, I think that one thing would be to try to like investigate murders,
Yeah.
Like if you were literally to pick one thing. And so, when you have a character who's like clearly a member of, this corporation that's very exploitative and, an oppressive police force, like that's a negative, right, to begin with. But like when that person's main step out of line is, wait, I'm not going to just sweep it under the rug when two people are murdered, like that is a, whether I guess I want to agree with you. The word sympathetic is a little, I can't find like, the lightning word, like that feels a little bit the lightning bug word to me, but not really wrong. Just like, to me, there's I
think I found a better way to say it. I think because in some ways you're right. It's not that he distrusts the government the way the one guy does, but he's willing to disobey orders to do what he thinks is right.
Right.
So in some ways, he's almost more of a Jim Gordon right now.
Yeah.
From like Gotham.
Right.
And what I would often maybe the way he reminds me of the guy from V for Vendetta is he's an antagonist who's also a point of view character.
Yes, and then in that becomes a collaborator, right? Spoilers for V for Vendetta. But like, yeah, exactly. And here there are other characters who I think are maybe going to become point of view characters who are an antagonist. I forget what her name was, but the one Imperial intelligence officer, I believe, right, who like really wants to track down the Starpath unit, and it seems like maybe that's for sort of personal career ambition. It's unclear, but that certainly is the implication from what I guess Blevins was saying. And I just remember Blevin because there was a Mets pitcher named Jeremy Blevins, so
who got his first chance in the not podcasting booth, in the
broadcasting
announcer's booth. Broadcasting booth, thank you. Yes, tying everything wonderfully together, because Keith Hernandez fell off a curb or something like that, which Blevin had also done. Anyway, that's enough Mets background for you. But yeah, it all ties together.
So
I gave Paul play-by-play of the game over Discord, and they didn't respond, so I have to like poke them with more stuff about it.
Was this more recent? This was today? No, this was the other day. The one with the 3 balks in 1 inning? Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, point being, I think that, and to me also, those two bureaucrats who are kind of, we get 3 bureaucrats, one of whom is just going to be Qyburn, because that's who we played in Game of Thrones. He's kind of the leader of the 3. But then just seeing that, like, the bureaucratic infighting of like, no, this should be my jurisdiction, this should be your jurisdiction. I don't think these two are ever meant to be as sympathetic. Well, again, I think they're less kind of potential collaborators with us, but I think they're definitely also supposed to be somewhat sympathetic characters. Again, in that kind of like, just the ridiculousness, not even sympathetic, but like, just the way that they're trapped in this bureaucracy that like, to me, what all this is showing is like, and I think you're right, it's the mundanity of evil point, that there are people like Tarkin and like Vader who really have the like, yes, we must rule, we must do all these things. And then there are these folks who they're in a bureaucracy and they want to rise to the top.
Right.
And they are utterly uninterested in the moral implications of the things that they're doing. And to me, that is definitely not make them like not culpable. In some ways, it makes it even more culpable. It's like you're just not caring, but it makes them fascinating characters. And I think it paints a much more realistic picture of the Empire than just the idea that they're all mustache twirlers who want to conquer everything.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we don't have enough information yet to say that they are uninterested in kind of what the Empire sets out to achieve. I think that's still ambiguous, but I do think that it's clear that there's other motives going on, and that it's complicated, right? These are people. They're portrayed as people within some big organization, as opposed to everything feeling very faceless, like when everybody's wearing a helmet, right? And I think that is all very deliberate. And I guess one of the reasons that the word sympathetic kind of jumps out to me, and I don't mean to harp on word choice so much, but please do. It moves into a point that I wanted to make, which is that, you know, I rewatched the first 3 episodes, and I've watched episode 4 twice already now, right? And you know, only because I like it that much, right? Not like, and I'm like, yeah, totally. I'll make better points when I know this and that and whatever. Sure, I mean, you know, responsible podcasting and all that. But like, really, I enjoy watching it again. The first 3 episodes, I just felt this like overwhelming sadness watching them.
I think that's fair.
You know, at various points, it's like in just like a conversation between like Casa and B, you know, just like that, just a simple conversation, and like realizing, oh, you know, B2 is his brother. You know, it starts out with him looking for his sister, but like that's his brother. And I rewatched Rogue One last night, and the way that Cassian responds when what's his name, K2 or something, K2 when he kind of like says goodbye to him, because you know he's going to the thing, he's locking the vault, and like he knows you know that he's basically staying out there potentially to sacrifice himself, and like there's a connection between those characters, you know.
There really is.
And so knowing that like his first brother was like also a droid, like it kind of hits differently, you know. And I feel like there are shows and movies where that kind of thing would be the result of, you know, what I'd call like emotional manipulation. You know, which is like, you know, the end of Saving Private Ryan, where they're like, okay, we need to have to see, am I a good man? You know, like, it's like, oh, geez, okay. It's like, and now you cry. It's like, please stop. You know, here I would say that it's not evocative. I mean, that it's not manipulative. It's not emotionally manipulative. I'd say it's emotionally evocative. You know, where
I think it's a good way to put it.
They basically just like lay something out for you, like here's what's happening, here's these characters, and then you get to kind of decide how you feel about it. You know, if this character is sympathetic to you, you know, if you feel sympathetic toward this character, you get to feel that, right? The story and the way it's delivered is not telling you not to. Right.
Yeah.
And like some people might feel that way and some might not. And I feel like the show gives you room for that. It lets that breathe.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. I think especially, I'm glad you pushed on a specific word, because I think the more I think about it, sympathetic isn't the right word. The right word is relatable.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
super
I've never felt Tarkin is someone who I just will love to, you know, and him being super arrogant and getting blown up in the Death Star, I cheer at that moment.
Yeah, it's great.
There's no one really in this show yet who I feel like I'm going to cheer when they get killed, you know? Because I'm like, I think you said it before. None of them are archetypical villains.
Right.
They're all people, and they're people making bad choices, especially those who were wrapped up in the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them we made, like, I think, I don't know, even like the detective superior officer, like, part of me sort of feels like a little mad at him because he was the one who wanted to like let the murderers just go away and like keep their head down. But also it meant that he wanted less cops doing cop things, so that's kind of good. And also he was right. His moment of like, I'm not even supposed to be here today. I didn't do this. Like, oh God, I've been there, dude. I've been there. So
right. It's like, but I told them not to do the thing, and they did the thing anyway.
And exactly what he suggested came to pass. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I totally lost my train of thought.
Well, I was going to say that the reason why I keep harping on this bureaucracy thing is because, and this is kind of like my political science background, but like it's been very well developed, very well documented. Like bad bureaucracies can happen any place, but especially when you have more authoritarian, dictatorial type leadership models, and this can be like within a company or within a community or within a church or a synagogue or like in a nation. The more that the goal of the bureaucracy isn't to serve the greater, need of the institution, it's to get noticed when you're doing good things and keep your head down the rest of the time and to throw people under the bus as much as you can. And
right.
It's why a lot of times people wind up not being loyal to you and why you wind up like, having people overthrow the leaders and stuff like that. But it's a thing we don't often see in terms of the like evil make evil of these corporations or businesses or countries or governments. And so I'm really loving seeing more of that in the Empire. And it feels so appropriate because I think where we really saw that is Krennic in Rogue One, where like, yeah, he's a bad dude. He wants to do horrible things. He thinks the destruction of hundreds of thousands of people in the city is beautiful. But also he's just trying to like get noticed by the Emperor and get the nice promotions. He doesn't seem to me like he truly cares about like the Empire. He just wants to do a job and get a gold star, which doesn't in any way make it okay. It just makes him a very different kind of motivation.
Yeah, and in fairness, Greg Fraser's cinematography was beautiful.
That's very true.
In that movie and in that moment. So, but maybe when you're murdering hundreds of thousands of people, like keep that to yourself.
I still remember being shown a picture of this just like gorgeous scene of this like mushroom type shape emerging in what looked like clouds and like reds and yellows and like them looking closer and be like, oh, that's a mushroom cloud from a nuclear bomb. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's mass murder. Right. Lovely. Yeah, I think it's a really good point about the sort of the different types of power structures and how they can, elicit certain behavior amongst the people in them. I think that's interesting. It's contrasted in an interesting way here with the rebels, basically. To me, the writing of letting us see more of both those power structures, I think, was just like, that's the kind of writing I miss, and that I love, where it's like that. Yeah. That was so intentional to, like you, I want this to be just one long thing I watch, but it is clear that each episode has very specific things they're doing in that episode. For sure. And then also, I think that there are going to be sort of like mini arcs, like, I mean, very mild spoilers for the next 2 episodes, but it's the same writer and director for that 3-episode block. And I believe the first 3 had the same, the first 3 were all written by Tony Gilroy and directed by Toby Haynes. And then the next 3 episodes are all written by Dan Gilroy and directed by Susanna White. Nice. Okay. So, so it's like they are these like little mini... so that might be like, okay, then we can sort of have an idea of something's going to happen and blah, blah, blah. But like, I think that's, I think each episode is very clearly like trying to do a thing, and feels coherent on its own. And I think that can be a huge challenge when you're trying to, write a 12-episode arc and have the whole thing play well, but then you want to have each thing play well on its own as well, right? One thing here that I noticed that I'm just going to throw out there, which might derail us a little bit, but there was essentially no action in this episode.
Yeah.
The only action scene in this episode was, what's that sound? Oh, it's a TIE fighter. Take cover. Okay, let's come out from the cover. That was the action scene. And I think episode 2 didn't have, at least, I don't think it had a fight scene either. And
I was thinking about this. So far, we've not seen any lightsabers, and which is not totally surprising, but I haven't seen, we saw the TIE fighters there, and we've seen some shuttles. We have not seen a single, like, starship fire a laser.
Right, yeah. There hasn't been any space battles. I mean, so far, literally, there's been a scuffle where one dude fell down and hit his head and died. And then another dude got just shot in the face point blank. And then there's been one, like, actual extended fight, kerfluffle, right? And that's it.
No, they're not relying on action. They're not... I feel like they're really giving their audience a lot of credit, and they're... We talked about this with the scene on Andor's home planet, and, like, the long extended scenes without any translation. Someone I know, by the way, kind of looked more into this and found that the language they're speaking is a mixture of Spanish, Portuguese, and Malay. Or it has elements from all three of those.
It has
and including, I think, some... Definitely Malay indigenous, but may also have some, like, from indigenous Latin America. I'm not positive on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I just feel like they're just trusting the audience. They're not hitting us over the head with the things. Not to open a whole tangent on this, but, like, I think one thing you and I have both talked about, and certainly I talked about with Jeff when I did these episodes, that the prequels felt like they were tackling some of the most adult, nuanced material, but that they were trying to make it relatable to the youngest kids. Here, I don't think that, like, this is less gory than Mandalorian, but I think this is the most adult-themed show. Like, I feel like you need to be the most mature kind of audience to enjoy this show. And that doesn't mean age. It just means, like, yeah, you're not going to have the plot spoon-fed to you. You're not going to have the elements spoon-fed to you.
Yeah, it's a temple of patience, as Skarsgård said to Mon Mothma, right? Like, when I have to say that the one thing that, like, stands just above all in this episode for me is that transformation from, like, rebel to art gallery. I mean, wow.
Just, like, watching him in that scene with Andor, I was already thinking, like, he's a really good actor. Like, the MCU doesn't give him enough to do. And then he did that transformation. That was so good. Yeah. And then he did the, like, I am still in this transformed veneer, but now I'm talking to Mon Mothma as a rebel again. I was like, you just played 3 characters in 15 minutes. Like,
absolutely. I have to say, that's one of the reasons I'm so glad you got me to watch Burn Notice, because Jeffrey Donovan, right? Jeffrey Dunn? Yeah. Plays so many different characters as Michael Weston, because Michael Weston is always playing it like a different character every episode, right? And it's like, I think he's fantastic. I don't think he has Stellan Skarsgård's, like, just gravitas. And, like, it's... one of the things that I think is so amazing about this show is you'll see shows like The Blacklist is the example I used when I was talking to someone about this, where, James Spader shows up and just absolutely devours the furniture, the scenery, like, he is just, like, just oozing with just, like, presence and just dominates the screen. And, like, almost no one else in the series can, like, keep up with him, There's a few people, and when they do, it's great, But, like, a lot of the characters just get overpowered by his presence. But here, first in the scenes with Bix, like, I feel like that really works when they're talking, and then in the scenes with Andor, with Diego Luna, like, that is like you feel both actors, like, really carrying, like, this presence and holding attention, and also, like, doing really subtle things. And then also, I think, is it Genevieve O'Reilly, who plays Mon Mothma? Like, it really, to give a performance that good, I think, is outstanding. To have that in a show where that's not an overpowering performance, and everybody in the scene with you is, like, matching that. Like, I don't even know if he gives the best performance in this show.
Like, to me,
but it's amazing.
I feel like this is even more than Mandalorian. Like, there's an element of which, like, the conversations in Star Wars are often going to be ones that we have no way of relating to. Like, you know, lightsabers and hyperdrives, and do you fix this, and will the asteroids hit us this? But my spouse invited people to dinner who don't like me and who I don't want to sit with, and I kind of forgot to talk to them about it, so it's a little my fault, but also they should have known better. Like, I've had that exact conversation. And so that scene with Mon Mothma and her husband was just so good because I know all the levels of Star Wars that it's on, but take away all of that and it is like a conversation that any two partners can have with each other and it be totally relatable. And I was like, that scene I just got chills with, and I get chills again talking about it because it just was like... Yeah. I hate the word elevated, but I feel like it's taking Star Wars in a completely new way that I love.
It makes it feel so real, you know? And it did make me feel different going back and watching Rogue One. And I mean, on the one hand, like there's a little bit like, oh, they really just do feel like they have to cram so many action scenes into these movies, you know? But at the same time, like it makes everything else that happens in that universe, like, you know that this stuff's going on. And now you've seen it, you know, and you can't unsee it. And so it makes the whole thing just feel more real and like carry more weight in another way, you know? And yeah, that scene felt like, I mean, I would say very relatable, except like, what's this inviting people over to dinner thing? But I'm familiar with the concept. But I also, like, it gave us a lot, you know? It's like, okay, we can feel there's definitely some friction in their relationship. He's like an old army dude, right? And like, you know, he's talking about from his regiment. It's like, well, was that with the Republic? Was that with the Empire? Like, I don't know. Was it both? Did he cross? I mean, if he was at first I was thinking, oh, well, it must be Empire because he's not a clone, right? But then it's like, oh, but maybe he was an officer for the Republic and then continued being an officer for the Empire and then retired at some point. I don't know. What does he do now? Yeah. We don't know. But like, it gives us a little bit of that, oh, your old army buddies, huh? In the Empire. Great. You know, and she's talking about, it's like that, not just like the whole like dinner party thing, but also the like arguing with someone about, like politics, right? She's like, especially when those politics are like whether or not to cause the mass starvation or not, you know? And that I think, I imagine resonates with a lot of people, you know. Fortunately, my wife and I see pretty eye to eye on a lot of things, and most things, you know, that are like really important to me anyway. But like, you know, a lot of people don't. A lot of people have had a lot of trouble over the last, you know, 6 or 7 years or whatever dealing with that.
Well, and especially because I feel like the position we've gotten until now has been someone like Princess Leia. God, I'm thinking like Tarkin. Has been someone like Princess Leia or Bail Organa, who is trying to toe the line fairly well of like, yes, I support the Empire. I'm a good senator, but I'm going to try and push back where I can and things like that. In some ways, Padme had been the one who had been the most kind of like pushing against the Empire and things. And we got some great Clone Wars episodes of her. And frankly, I'm now kind of on the fence of like, I think Natalie Portman would be too old to play her again, but I would kind of love it if we got Padme at some point in this. You know, just in terms of like the senatorial...
Like flashbacks?
Oh no! Okay, no.
She's very dead.
I'm getting confused. The couple of years before the Emperor takes over, and the couple of years before the Senate is dissolved. So that's my bad. Ignore that.
Oh yeah. That's like 19, 20 years, right? I mean, it's between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, right? That's the period of time between.
Yeah. She dies like 3 days after the Empire is declared. So.
Right, and then it takes another 20 years to dissolve the Senate officially. But here they're talking about having governors. Yeah, exactly.
In charge, and they're talking about like you still need the Senate and stuff like that. And my sense is that Mon Mothma is especially from what we saw of her in the Clone Wars and in Rebels, in Rebels specifically, she's kind of the AOC or the Bernie Sanders. Like, she's probably the person who's
right. Yeah,
if they ever start rounding up senators, she'll probably be number one on the list.
Yeah.
Even before
she basically said
and
that.
So I think she's in this very interesting position of but she is also actually working with the rebellion, and especially in Return of the Jedi and the original movies, she comes across as so serene and so this is what we have to do. I loved the fear we saw from that actress, that she's terrified, I think with good reason, because she knows she's the first one they'll come after. And she's not just doing the dangerous thing of speaking out. She's doing if the Empire thinks anyone in the Senate would help the rebels, they probably think her, and that's exactly what she's doing.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
It highlights to me how brave and how important what she's doing is. And the actress was just amazing.
Yeah, I think she was fantastic. She doesn't have a deep cover.
Yeah, I think exactly
right. Stellan Skarsgård's character has he's in deep cover. I mean, we don't know whether he's made public statements about this or that or whatever, but he's basically just, I run this art gallery, right? And then he goes off, he takes off the wig, right? He wears a wig, he dresses totally different. He holds himself differently, and so, someone could get a picture of it, see him in both spots and not even know it was the same dude, right? Whereas she is who she is, right? So she'll go and have her driver distracted and go in and have a conversation, which I thought was this fabulous little detail, and that's just another taking a very small character and giving them some personality and some life and making them actually, it's the assistant at the museum didn't have to be a character, but she is a character, right? And the driver didn't have to be a character, but he's like, oh no, I couldn't afford anything here. And he's like, well, okay. And he keeps kind of looking over oh, I'm supposed to be spying on her. Oh, what a lovely 15,000-year-old penny,
And what a lovely person who's showing them to me,
Sure, yeah, exactly. I mean, so it's that. There just really are a lot of things playing on a lot of levels.
And I thought this was the thing where, during our preview episode and during our coverage of the first three, there were a couple times where I was kind of not saying anything to not spoil you. And especially when we're talking about, I think you said something you thought the show was mostly going to be about, the small level, Andor and what he was doing. This was what I knew, was that, as you said, not only that Mon Mothma was going to be in the show, but that my impression is, and again, I don't know much, but my impression is that a good part of the show will be about the kind of the Mon Mothmas and the art dealers of it all. And I'm really excited for that, because I think it is very interesting to see, how are all these pieces going to start to come together. And I think if we had an entire episode that kind of forgot about Andor and was just this, I wouldn't have liked it. But I thought this did a really good job of basically giving us three stories at the same time. Andor getting to work with the rebels, which we started to talk about, we definitely should talk about more. What's happening with Skarsgård and with Mon Mothma, and then what's happening in the Imperial bureaucracy. And I was really impressed with how it balanced all three.
Yeah, me too. I think it can be difficult to juggle multiple things like that, and often, and I think they really did a good job of showing only a tiny little bit of the former deputy inspector, right? But also they just there's one scene with him besides him talking to Blevins, right? Or is that's who he's talking to, right? Yeah. And that one scene is him just getting slapped and then hugged by his mom, and then her being like, "What are you looking at?" It's while they're in this just most depressing poured concrete structure of apartments, and it just that gives so much personality and life to those characters. I feel like I already know the mom, even though she had two lines. When
was the last time you saw a villain's mom, but not in a horrible way, but just kids had a hard day at work,
Right, exactly. Why haven't you called? Why haven't I heard from you for 2 weeks?
And I think I also really like that, because I've mentioned how some of the books go into this. This is the first time I've really seen it on here. I think for those of us who don't live under authoritarian structures and regimes, I mean, we sort of do in the United States, but nowhere near like what's happening there.
But not on that level. Yeah.
It's very easy to be judgmental of what we call collaborators. And I feel like that scene was very intentional to be like, you know, like I used to be a person who thought anyone who would willingly join the U.S. military was just scum of the earth, evil. How can you not see what the U.S. military is doing in Iran and Afghanistan and all this kind of stuff? And I still feel that way about the institution. But then when I came to learn more about, like, you know, how kids are getting recruited since they're 15 with everything from like Marvel movies to video games to just recruiters flat out lying to kids about what kind of college benefits they can get. And also living in situations where there is so little other possibility that's offered to you that, yeah, like I hate the idea that someone thinks this is the right option. But yeah, joining the police or joining the army is often one of the only like ladders to success or ladders to get out in some ways, or at least it's presented as that. And so I can really hate the institution while have some sympathy. I feel like that scene with him and his mom in that depressing house was meant to show exactly that, you know, of like, yeah, you're not happy that this guy has this job, but here's where he came from. And this job offered to like help him get out of it and let him see the galaxy and, you know, have something his mother could respect. And it doesn't make it okay, but it makes it, again, more relatable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of ways to understand where someone's coming from when they make the decisions that you think are bad decisions, right? Compared to just being like, oh, that's a terrible decision. I'm not even going to think about your point of view, you know? And you can still disagree with the decision. You can still be like, that's still a bad thing to do. Like, I still think that's messed up. But it's different than just like not even entertaining the notion of like where someone's coming from.
Yeah. And like, to me, it's also the like, I find it very difficult. I think this is an important thing. Like, it's very easy to stand in judgment of how someone deals with a problem that you've never had to face, you know? And so I just always try to have that more understanding.
Yeah. I have to make a baseball reference now because we're getting baseball score updates in the chat, which is fantastic. Thank you, BuffyBot. But also there's this Roger Clemens quote, who's this pitcher that I grew up not being a fan of. And, you know, there was a pitcher that I was a fan of, Dwight Gooden. And, you know, Gooden had these drug issues, right? And Clemens, they were both these young, phenomenally talented
They came up almost the same amount of time,
who,
same time. I think they both got Rookie of the Year
like
the same year or something like that.
They both got Cy Young the same year in 86, and Gooden got Rookie of the Year 84, and I think Clemens 85. But they were both phenomenally good, and that's wrong. Gooden got Cy Young 85. Anyway, so Clemens was once asked, you know, why do you think you were able to like deal with the success and like, you know, Gooden wasn't? And he was like, I don't know what his life was like growing up. You know, I've had a different experience. Like, I can't sit here and judge and say like what. I don't know the exact quote, but it was to the extent of like, look, I didn't live this guy's life. I'm not going to tell you I've handled something better because of this or that or the other reason. I don't know what it's like to be him, you know? And it's like, I think it's always good to seek to understand, you know, where someone came from, like what their life was like and what it's like to be them. And like the best way to do that is ask them, right? And then listen. But like, you know, you can never assume that you know.
Definitely. We started to talk about the power structure of the Rebels, and we probably need to not only talk about the so relatable villains every time. So let's actually talk about, because Andor goes through a lot. First of all, on behalf of all those who thirst for that particular type of figure, I will pour one out for the beard. It took me. His face looks okay without the beard. He's starting to get some stubble again, but the minute he first shaved, I was like, no. But yeah, what'd you think about, like, because he has this great conversation with Skarsgård, and then he meets all the rebels, and we get to see the whole rebel power structure that, like you said, is very different than the other one we get. What'd you kind of think of all that?
Yeah, so I thought, I mean, it's very different, but also in some ways similar, right? In that, so first of all, it's very compartmentalized, and I think that's for necessity, right? That's because they're spies, they're insurgents. Like you don't want one person to get captured and then have that, basically lead to everybody getting outed, right? So it's interesting. So Luthen actually is the character's name, right? Skarsgård's character. So he basically goes and tells Vel, who's the leader of this group, right? She's running this
cell,
mission.
I think we can call
and
it.
He's like, this cell, yeah, we can call it a cell. And he's basically like, look, I've got this guy, you need to take him and go do the mission. And then she's like, well, so, are you giving me a choice? And he's like, yeah. And it's like, oh, okay, he actually is giving her a choice. He's like, you can either take this guy and now you have the critical redundancy to be able to actually do this. And if something goes wrong, you can still do it, right? It doesn't have to be everything goes right. Or you can call it off. Right. And he's like, so that you could say that that's not a real choice, but it is a real choice. It is not like, no, you have to do this. If you don't, I'm going to shoot you. Right. Like it's not, or you're going to be fired. It's like, no, you're the leader of this mission, but I'm telling you, if we're going to do this, you need to have this extra guy with you. Right. It's just, then it's going to work. He's like, I was going to cancel it before. So clearly there is a power structure there, but also there is agency. Right. And he's like, you wanted to lead. Like you basically said you wanted to step up and do this. And then she was empowered to, now she's running the mission. Right. And then when she takes Andor to go meet the rest of the crew is like, they're bristling at it, right? Because they're like, who's this? We've got 3 days. We've been planning for 5 months, prepping for 5 months, and 3 days ahead of the thing, which has to be on the exact date because there's like a meteor shower, but it's not really a meteor shower, something about micro. So anyway, it like, she's like, no, this is how it's going to be, and like, she still could call it off. And so it's just, I don't know, the way it's like, there's definite structure there, but it also feels like there is more agency than there might be, within the Empire.
And like, this is something that's often talked about. I forget the exact name of it, but it's basically the idea of like, everyone at a certain level gets to have their say and gets to disagree, and you don't get shot for disagreeing. Right. But once that group has made its decision, now everyone has to go out and fully support it to the next layer down, And I think she does a very good job of that. Like she doesn't for a minute really express that she has. There's one moment where she's like, yeah, I have some of your same concerns, but she's really just like,
right. I should have told you. You should have been consulted.
But she's also just like, this is the decision. This is what I want, even though we know she doesn't like it. And it's, to me, that is like, having been part of some Occupy groups where they really tried to do the like everyone has to agree to everything kind of model. I like that model. I don't want authoritarianism in my politics, but I also think some degree of like democratically elected authority or like recognized authority that then acts with authority within the ways it's been kind of like democratically accepted, sometimes that's a lot better because not much got done at those Occupy meetings where it was just 40 people or 400 people all getting to have their say. I
think the key is that authority is voluntarily given. It's voluntarily placed in that person, and that it like has an expiration date.
And it's from the bottom up, not instead of like from the top down.
Right, exactly. Yes.
And again, like we said with the other people, I don't remember their names because I'm terrible with names, but like I feel like I have a pretty clear idea of who each person on that team is. In terms of like, you've got the person who's like really into the nitty gritty details and maybe kind of on the spectrum somewhat, and someone else who is like, kind of the weapons person, and like the person who's like just happy someone else is there. Like it's a fun team, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know them all and seeing the way they all interact over the season.
Yeah, or at least over the next few episodes. I would caution, don't get too attached.
I was going to say earlier, I think it's very possible that this mission will be this three episode arc that you're talking about, and many of these people will die.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very likely, right? Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't know, Rogue One's the type of movie that like I could like less than I liked. Like if I went in thinking, oh, maybe there'll be a whole bunch of movies with these characters in it, and oh, I like these characters.
Yeah.
Wait, what? But like for whatever reason, I went in and I'm like, yeah, they're just definitely going to kill all of these characters in this movie. Like, I just felt like that was a certainty almost, you know? And I really liked the characters, but it made sense, and it didn't feel like super emotionally manipulative, you know? And, you know, here in this show, I think this was the first episode where they didn't kill any characters.
I think it's true, yeah.
But there was no action, so... Wait, the second episode, then, how did anybody get killed? I'm trying to remember. Whatever. But, like, you know, when they killed that, like, Tim character, you know, it's like, to me, that was, like, just like, you know, you get to feel how you feel, right? And, like, it wasn't like, you should feel this way about it. And I don't know, I think some of the, like, more sort of subversive aspects of that is, like, or the sort of interesting aspect is like, okay, we're going to take this character that you might not particularly like, or we're going to have that be the character that gets killed by the police. And so, like, you can kind of investigate your feelings on that a little bit more, you know, as opposed to, like, making it this, like, I don't know. I just think that's a thing that's really easy to do really badly, and they didn't, you know. It's like, there's complexity.
I mean, this is going to sound like a weird analogy for Tim, but I think it actually works. As I talked before, I used to work in reproductive justice politics, you know, around like supporting abortion rights and stuff like that. And a lot of what I did was political, but a lot of it was counseling because I was still in the clergy at that point. And so it was like, you know, talking to people who had, you know, or were thinking of having abortions and were just dealing with all the emotions that were coming up around that and wanted a safe space. And this was by no means the majority of people I talked to, but sometimes it was people who were like, yeah, you know, I was always the person who stood outside the clinic with my protest sign saying abortion's murder, and then I got pregnant and realized it was what I had to do. And I think it's very easy to make a punchline out of that person, and I think that it's somewhat deserved in terms of it being like the hypocrisy of that. But I also could recognize that, like, having this set of beliefs that you never had to really question until it actually happens in your life or the life of your daughter, your sister, your spouse, or someone like that. And suddenly you have to realize that, like, maybe these closely held beliefs that you've always had, like, don't work for you, and you have to do something against them. Like, yeah, I think we should call out that hypocrisy, but I also can recognize, like, the emotion that goes through, and that's a hard moment. And to me, that's Tim. You know, that Tim had the sense of authority will keep us safe, and we'll get rid of this guy. But I think it never would have occurred to him that calling in the Empire would put either Bix or himself in danger. And I think he's an idiot. I think he's a hypocrite. But I also can be I get it. I get why that is, and it's. Granted, when I watched it that first time, I hadn't put all those pieces together. The second I had, there's a little bit of like, yeah, you kind of got what you deserved a little bit, but also like, yeah, you get what you deserved because you believed in a lie, and now you're seeing that the lie is false, and that I can still say like, yeah, that sucks for you.
Right. Yeah. I agree. And I thought it was interesting that, you know, Bix was like that upset, you know? Like, she clearly did care about this guy, even if she was also mad at him.
Like, yeah, and I think that's important. I don't think she was, like, totally in love with Andor and just sleeping with him to get the position she was. I think she genuinely had a loving relationship with him.
Yeah, it was just, like, a kind of weird one, you know? But it was what it was. And, yeah.
Did you think it's... The only thing that rang a little false to me, and it was hard to balance because I've seen everything else in Rogue One, but so far we've seen Andor be good in a fight in a way that most people don't see him, and we haven't really seen much else from him, especially in terms of the stuff that Bix would see. Like, I want to say Lestat. It's clearly not that. What was Skarsgård's name? Luthen like goes on this thing about how you have all these redundancies for everybody else. You're a good pilot. You're a good fighter. And I sort of was like, well, I know he is that from Rogue One, but do we really know that about this character now?
Well, he knows that. We don't necessarily know that. But, you know, he knows that this guy's been acquiring stuff out from under, the Empire's nose
that's
repeatedly.
True. Okay, that's fair.
He knows his backstory, right? He knows that he deserted, right? He claims not to have, but he knows that he did. Like he's got his file somehow, right? He's got intelligence reports on him that other people don't. How does he?
Okay, that's fair.
He's a super spy.
Fair.
I don't know. I mean, I get the kind of like, it's like, well, have we really seen anything that impressive from him? It's like, I don't think he has all the skills that he ends up with in
Rogue One.
Rogue One. But I do think that it's also, I think it's more of a, like, the personality test sort of, and conviction of, like, this is somebody who is not just that he's got all these skills that are useful. He has a bunch of useful skills that are good. Kind of, we can develop those, right? Like, it's a lot easier to go from knowing some stuff about a thing to then, like, being a lot better at it than, like, starting just from scratch, right? And I think, like, knowing that, he's willing to kill someone if he feels like it's what he needs to do. He's willing to lie about things, and he's willing to, like, I think this role-playing game was called Twerps, right? But there's some game where basically you had, like, 8 stats or something, and I think you just rolled a d20 to, like, it was, like, the most just, like, just very wide deviations, right? And one of the stats, I rolled a 20 for creating this character, which I then never played. We never played the campaign. But the stat was chutzpah. And I feel like Andor has a 20 in chutzpah.
I think I'd agree with that.
He's just like, and the one guy's like, he's got brass. You can see it. Basically just like, clearly he's willing to take risks and to just sort of like front and just be like, and so I think that's the sort of thing you can't teach very easily.
I think it's very fair.
Right.
I think it's very fair. And I loved that, like, going back to the conversation we had before the show started, we talked about, like, how much hope would be in this show. And I was less, I was sort of saying that I didn't really want it to be about hope. I realized I did, but that I think this episode helped me better understand what I was looking for that I think we're getting, which is that, like, the Luthen character isn't saying, come with me, we can restore the Republic. He's not saying, come with me, we can tear it all down, we can make the galaxy right again. He's saying, we can do some damage to this terrible thing. He's saying, like, we can poke them in the eye. And it's like, he's offering, and Andor is really struggling even with that. There's a great scene where he's like, I don't know why I should do this. And to me, like, that's the kind of hope that I want this to be about. It's like the first glimmers of hope that maybe you could even, like, do something the Empire would notice. And, like, someone once described, the formations of rebellions. I think it was a history professor I was listening to, like, give a lecture or a podcast or something. But it's kind of like watching iron fillings in slow motion gather around a magnet, that it's just like slowly they kind of are coming together from different directions in different places and starting to slowly form this larger thing. And that's what I think we're kind of seeing here. We're seeing the way that hope is expressed on everything from Mon Mothma's level to their level, because for Mon Mothma, I don't think she's trying to overthrow the Emperor either. I think she's just trying to see, can we keep some shipping lanes open to keep these people fed? And can we, maybe help these missions so that, like, I don't know, something about stealing money, like, was just such a, like,
I was like,
it's a heist. And it's like, so I just recently read this wonderful, or listened to a podcast on this wonderful history of the Russian Revolution. And it talked about how, like, the early, like, communist leaders, including Stalin, became these folk heroes because they were robbing trains and, like, giving the money to the people as a way to, like, screw over the Tsarist government. And, like, Pancho Villa was very much the same kind of thing. And, like, the fact that's what they're doing, they're just robbing payroll.
Yeah, that's the Robin Hood myth, right?
But it's also it again felt so mundane. Like, they're not stealing a hypo turbo Sauber laser,
Right. Yeah, it's just credits. I mean, it's the entire quarterly payroll for a sector. So a lot of credits, right? But like, yeah, it's, I think, and I mean, I do think Mon Mothma and Luthen want to overthrow the Empire and restore democracy, basically. I think they want to stop it from doing what it's doing. And it's like expansion, right? I mean, and we're talking, they're talking about that. And that's the place where they are is a place where there is this expansion, right? Where they, whether it's colonialism or if they're not even setting up a colony, they're basically just driving off, the natives and making, using it for whatever resources, right? I mean, I guess you could call it, it's like a distribution colony or something. I think it's Aldani is the name of the episode and the name of the place.
Yeah, I think that's right.
That they went to, right? And also the name of the people who had lived there. And so, I think Andor has some sort of relation to that. He can relate to that of, it was the Republic in his case, but coming to his planet and messing everything up, basically, right?
I think you're right that they do have that overall hope but I don't think they have a long-term I think they...
No, I'm agreeing with you in a really long-winded fashion. Well, I mean, let me get to the part where I'm agreeing. Like, I do think that they have this overarching hope and long-term goal. But I think their short-term goal is we're just going to do this, that, and the other, and then boom, no more empire, right? I think they're like, what we need to do is... I mean, I think Mon Mothma is basically like, she's trying to do what she can within the political sphere and then also fund Luthen's projects, kind of, right? And Luthen probably has a number of different sort of irons in the fire in various fires. And the idea is like, we want to deliver a blow to the Empire that like people will know about and be like, oh, they're not invincible. It's to at pain of, I don't know, referencing a Zack Snyder movie, which was the only one that I enjoyed the first time I saw it, in 300, where they basically just want to draw blood, strike one time Xerxes, right? To basically be like, look, this is not a god, this is a human, and he can bleed, And I think that's kind of sort of what they're doing, is they're like, let us draw blood so that people can see, like, oh, the Empire can be attacked, right? Like there is hope for and ultimately for a rebellion.
They don't have the plan yet. They don't even have the people to make the plan yet. They just want to do something that makes people feel like maybe we should get together in a room and talk about having a plan,
Right, exactly. And then we'll have some money that we can fund that plan with.
And it's kind of funny because you know that like the plan never really comes together because like by the time Rogue One shows us that by the time of like the full galactic civil war breaking out, it's still just like all these different ideas. And like in my training as a community organizer and as a political activist and all that, one of the things that is drilled into us from day one is the first thing you need to do in organizing is find a way to win. Like find a small victory, choose something that is like not going to be a huge effort, but just again to show that like, look, the landlord, the company boss, the political organization, whatever it is, find a way to show that they're not. Yeah, and pulling it back to my favorite of those kind of movies, that's the whole thing of V for Vendetta, is he just wants to show that like, like you can get away with something. I think
exactly. You can blow up that building, and
I think that's a perfect way to describe it in terms of like what the two of them are going for. Yeah. And so, what do you think about kind of what we learn about Andor in terms of his like feeling very like unsure about all this, but then kind of once he commits, he's pretty committed. Like he hears the whole plan and is like, "This is totally ridiculous," and then it's like, "Okay, I'm in."
Well, I'll reframe that a little bit. He hears the basics of the plan and is like, that's a terrible plan. And then they're like, yeah, but this is the full plan. And he's like, that's a great plan. I'm in, like, and it is, right? It's like without that meteor shower, that's not really a meteor shower. It's a terrible plan. It's not a plan. It's like just a way to get yourself killed. But it's like, there is this little detail that it's like, this is the window. Right. It's still a daring plan that like might not work, but it's like, when they actually explain to him a really good plan, it's like, now he's in. And I think in the beginning, he's like, hey, look, like when he's talking to Luthen, he's like, I've heard all these people fighting for this, fighting for that. At the end of the day, you're just fighting, and it's like, there's just no point to any of it. There's no whatever. And I mean, on some level, like maybe he's to some extent right that like, yeah, you do overthrow the Empire and then the New Republic doesn't sound great, honestly. They're still frickin' hanging people and stuff, right? I mean, it's like, I don't know what's wrong with that. But like, you can make things less horrible, right? That's possible. And like Luthen basically just sells him on the idea of like, look, you're never going to stop fighting these guys. But like, you're doing it in this little way where eventually you're going to get caught. They're going to hang you anyway because they don't care whether it's, whether it's a penalty for jaywalking or a penalty for murder. Like, they'll kill you the same way. Right. They don't care, right? And like, why not actually do something that can cause some real damage? And and finally he's like, yeah, all right, I guess so. Also like 200,000 credits sounds pretty good.
Definitely true as well.
And then once he's decided to buy in, it's like they explain the plan. He's like, oh, this is your dumb plan. And they're like, no, but here's the good plan. And he's like, all right, the good plan, I'll do it. But can I eat my food first?
I think it still sounds like a pretty, like 7 people against a garrison of 40. Like, there's a lot of things that make the plan sound pretty suspect, but you're right. He does hear a much better version of the plan and then has some more buy-in.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're just not going to get blasted. Here's the thing. Getting in and getting the stuff and getting out the door, that's a challenge. Right? Then escaping in this slow-moving little, like, freight truck basic type thing while there's TIE fighters that's not a challenge. That's like, shooting...
The impossibility.
Womp rats in tea, whatever. Anyway. So, yeah, I mean, it's like... The first one is, like, 0% chance of success. The other one's, like, non-zero chance of success. Also, I think they're going to have, like, uniforms... Yeah. And they're going to, which I'm like, wait, if it's a garrison of 40, everybody's going to know each other, right? So this isn't going to depend on like them pretending to be, it's going to have to be based on them pretending to be someone from outside.
Yeah, I think they're going to be like an inspection team or something like that. But they all have to have capes, I think, because they needed that guy's belt and gloves, but they had their uniform, so.
Right. I hope everybody has capes. Capes are the best.
That'd be awesome. All right, well, we've had a lot to say. We've now gone longer than the episode itself, though we think we could go much, much longer. Any other last things you wanted to say as we wrap up?
I'm sure something will come to me as soon as we end. But no, I'm just enjoying the series a lot. I'm looking forward to where it goes. And I'm not going to speculate too much. I'm just going to kind of take it as it comes and be annoyed that it is released so slowly.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is a compliment.
I loved getting the 3 episodes at once, and I think particularly the kind of story that those 3 episodes were telling, I think we needed that. But yeah, it definitely gave me like, now there's only 1 episode at a time? This is right, not enough. Yeah. This is not enough. All right, well.
The only upside was I could watch it twice before the cast.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, after which we will come back with a little bit of feedback and our last words and our stinger. But I do just want to quickly say that, as always, Paul is Zen Madman. I am the Ethical Panda. If you Google those 2 things, you can find us on all the places. Both of us have Discord channels where you can discuss all these kind of things. I'm going to try and get the Discord really around Andor going a lot more. It's going to be in an Andor spoilers section. Just to help keep people unspoiled. Lots of great podcasts going on over on Superhero Ethics Podcast. Zen Madman's got all kinds of great poker stuff and chess stuff. Check all those things out, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back, everybody. All right, let's do some quick feedback, and then we will round out with our Let's do some quick feedback, and then our top 3 list of the week. So first of all, speaking of top 3 lists, Matthew Roberts wrote in, and he said, "Hi, fellow Star Wars fans. Love lists. Just listen to the first part of the episode about villains. Very glad you enjoyed that part." And said his top 3 are Thrawn, Maul, and Cad Bane. Top 2 already discussed, but Cad Bane gets in there for me just because of how menacing, ruthless, and out for himself he is. Sure, I'll email more lists when I listen to the rest of the episode. Matt from the UK. Well, thank you. I'm glad we have an international audience. This podcast was the 231st most listened to movie and TV podcast in Canada last week, but not this week. So nice. Canadians, come on. I think there's 2 of you in Toronto and 1 in Vancouver. Get those listener numbers back up. But yeah, what do you think? What do you think of Cad Bane as one of the great villains of Star Wars?
So first of all, I just want to say I think Canada's a lot bigger than you're giving it credit for. But
I mean, that was joking entirely about our listenership in Canada. Yes, that's fine.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah, Cad Bane's great. I think Cad Bane's a fantastic character. I really enjoyed the fight scene between Cad Bane and Fennec Shand in The Bad Batch. Actually, that's like a sort of just like random. I don't know. I mean, there's tons of great Cad Bane moments, but that one just kind of jumped out at me as like actually one of the best fights in Star Wars. That was not, not a lightsaber battle.
Yeah.
Which yesterday I had one that was, I think, the best non-lightsaber battle in Star Wars. Was Chirrut in Rogue One. Who I was going to say is definitely one of my favorite non-Jedi characters, but now like also all of the characters in Andor.
I mean, like, Chirrut is a non-Jedi character, and that's a non-lightsaber.
It doesn't count, though, right?
He is clearly like having some attenuation with the Force, so it's like it's true on a technicality. Right. But in terms of Cad Bane, I agree. I think to me, Hondo Ohnaka and Cad Bane, neither would be as an amazing character if they didn't have the other. Because to me, they are the two sides of the scum and villainy part of Star Wars. In that, Hondo Ohnaka is the fun-loving pirate, and Cad Bane is just like, in some ways, I feel like if he was a Force user, he would be straight up Sith, because he like has that like ruthless mentality of like, I will kill who I need to kill, I will silence who I need to silence, I will be intimidating, but he also like. He's incredibly funny as he does it. He has a sense of humor, and he has that sense of awareness. Yeah. There's that wonderful episode where I think it might be like his flashback for him, but I forget the exact details. But basically, he like sees someone who has a hat, and he's like, "Nice hat," and like that becomes the hat he has, and become like, because his hat is always so symbolic. And like, it's fun how they do like metaphor for things, and like Mandalorian and part of Rebels clearly was like the Western. He is a straight up black hat from a cowboy movie, and they make it work,
Yeah,
and
100%.
just I think he's amazing. So that's definitely a good one. We also had people. I don't know if these are your actual screen names or if you're just finding really good names to email us in with. But your mom's Jedi wrote in. Love the show, 3 exclamation points. They don't specify if they mean Andor or our show, so I'm going to take one of those exclamation points for us, and the other 2 are for Andor. Glad you folks are doing this great analysis. Do you think we will see Vader, the Emperor, any other big names of the galaxy at this time? Thanks for all you're talking about. Love the show.
I'm going to say I hope not, but probably at some point I feel like we'll see Vader or like one or the other. But like every time there's a show and then finally a lightsaber shows up, I'm like, yeah, lightsabers. But like, if any show has no lightsabers in it, it should be this one.
I think that's very true. I think it's entirely possible we won't see either one of them, and I'll be very happy about it. I know James Earl Jones just announced that he is officially retiring as doing the voice of Darth Vader. And frankly, I don't ever want anyone else to do his voice. Like, I think we can just be done with that character. He announced it, though, after the show started airing, so I don't know if that means he did record some stuff for this.
Well, he recorded with some company, he recorded a certain amount of his voice that then they can use.
Oh, for like the AI kind of thing. Okay, yeah. I think that tech is getting better and better.
I'll accept that.
Yeah. Especially because it's not like looking at his face, it's just the voice.
Right. Yeah.
I would say I don't have any idea what Vader is up to during this time. Like, he's running the Inquisitors. Right. Like, I don't want to see any of the Force stuff he's doing. But I'm kind of curious, like, what is he doing in the official government, Like, Princess Leia clearly knows who he is by the end of New Hope. I'd be curious to see, like, I'd love to see a scene in the Senate. I'd love to see a scene where, like, maybe the Emperor is speaking to the Senate,
sure.
and we're seeing, like, Mon Mothma and Bail Organa, like, but, like, that, I want to see the Emperor or Vader as politicians or as part of this government. I don't want to see them as Force users. And like, in the same way, like,
right.
I really hope no one on their team has Force abilities. Like, I don't... Like, Luke really needs to be one of the only Jedi, please. And we already have, like, 5 running around right now.
Yeah. No, it definitely, I think, can get out of control fast. And I feel like the way that this feels real in this, like, this, Kyber crystal is a relic of an ancient world, basically. Even though we know it's not been that long since there were, like, a lot of Jedi running around, and maybe it would have been better if it weren't that way. I like the idea that, like, maybe Andor never saw a Jedi.
Yeah, I think that's legit.
And never saw a lightsaber. I do think seeing the Emperor as the Emperor and not as Darth Sidious, I think could work. I'm with you on that. I think you could have a scene in the Senate. And I think if you see... I feel like Vader should be this shadowy figure that most people just don't even know about much. And so maybe he could show up at some point and it's like, oh, that's Vader. And I feel like in Rogue One, they kind of went for that.
Yeah.
But, like, as cinema, as visually pleasing as the Vader cameo was, particularly at the end of Rogue One, I think the movie would have been better without it.
I think it's fair. I think it certainly would have been better without,
it definitely without the choking on your aspiration. Oh, jeez.
I thought Krennic going to him was a really good scene for the bureaucracy part of it. But yeah, the puns and all that did not work in the slightest. I would say the character... your mom's Jedi, which again, it doesn't beat Darth Housewife for me, but it's close. I think more though than the Vader, the Emperor. Like, I really hope Jimmy Smits is in this somewhere as Bail Organa. Of course. I don't know how many different ages of Princess Leia we're gonna get at different times because the girl who played her in Kenobi would be too young. But like, I could see us getting a 15-year-old Leia. Like, I'd be interested, or even some of the less known characters, like. I guess I was going to say the Bridgers, Ezra's parents, but this is happening as Rebels is starting. So by this point, the Bridgers have, like, already been arrested and taken away.
Right, but so maybe they're prisoners somewhere that then becomes relevant.
Yeah, that could definitely happen.
Or Zebo, I think was his name.
Yeah, Zebo could be a thing. I mean, certainly they could talk, like, just having some one mention of, like, I can't be too well known. Think about what happened to the Bridgers. The fact that this is happening simultaneously to Rogue One to Rebels makes me want to have more of that kind of.
Yeah, I think having some tie-ins there, and I imagine there's already maybe some spoilers or there's some things that are known or things people speculate. Yep. I don't really want to speculate too much on it, but I would like to see some. I want to feel like it's in the same world without feeling like these people necessarily know each other well,
Right.
And BuffyBot says it's a Ukrainian company that has been authorized to use James Earl Jones' voice in the
nice.
I do think, like, the challenge there is, like, in terms of, like, the AI and stuff, like. I want to give James Earl Jones a little more credit than, like, it's not just his voice in terms of the sound of it, but also the way he uses it, right? I mean, it's very evocative. It's not just bassy and rich.
No, he's an incredible actor.
Yeah. And his dad actually lived in my building when I grew up.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
I was often on the elevator with his dad, which was fun. Who was also an actor.
James Earl Jones was the speaker at my college graduation.
Oh, awesome.
And he, as was expected, he ended it with, like, his charge to all you graduates, I hope things go well. And like, his whole speech was like, I didn't come from a world where I got to go to a ritzy college like this.
Yeah.
You had better use this to help people. And we're like, James Earl Jones is a scary, scary man with a voice. But then he closed by saying, and may the force be with you. And, like, I was just like, oh my. And then I was like, no, of course I've never heard him say that.
Right.
Vader
don't say that. But he's like, may the Force rip the air out of your lungs as I crush your esophagus with my mind.
Exactly. Okay, we're not going to get a full episode out of the stinger, but I do want to kind of make us not go too long. So let's go to the actual last question we have, which is top 3, or like, it doesn't have to be in order, but your top 3 ships in the Star Wars universe. And for this one, we specified that it's not like individual ships like the Ghost, but it's more like X-Wings or Star Destroyers, or like a class of ship. Yeah,
like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot that I've enjoyed. I mean, like, the X-Wing is just the classic, you know. Mm-hmm. It was watching Rogue One and seeing Red 5 get blown up and be like, oh, and then they're going to need a new Red 5. Wait, but they lost the ship. You know, but like, so I mean, that's a classic. And when that ship shows up again, you know, years later after that, it's especially awesome. You know, I don't even know, was it a Corellian? No. I mean, the Millennium Falcon, you know, is just...
Yeah, it's like a Corellian freighter, this kind of number. Yeah, but that's fine.
And like, I mean, I'm just going to go with the classics, like a Star Destroyer, or like particularly a Super Star Destroyer, like the one with like all like the blue lights on the side, and just how tiny the other Star Destroyers look next to that. You know, it's I don't know. There's something about like the way they made those 3 main ships from the original movie. Well, I mean, the Superstar Destroyer's Empire, right? But the way they made them so differently shaped, you know, and like, you know, the Imperial ships just being so pointy, and like, you know, they look. It's almost like in video games of the era, like you would have like the different like ships that you're shooting at, like they'd be different, very basic geometric shapes, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And there's like so much detail to these, but also they're these very, like the Millennium Falcon is like a circle with a triangle sticking out of it, and then a little like nub in it, you know?
And thing on the side.
Yeah, and like, so there, and then there's an X, and then there's a triangle. Like those are the, you know, and there's just something so like, I don't know, almost like primal or like archetypical about those ships.
And there's also, of course, the other main one that you didn't mention, the TIE Fighters.
Oh, yes.
Which I found out I've always kind of had a small love for, even though they're ridiculous. Because there again, like, the X-Wing looks like it's like, you know, and it looks like a ship that's made to glide through the air. You know, it looks aerodynamic.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous because there's no aerodynamics in space. Right. And they wouldn't dogfight like that.
Things don't blow up, blah, 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 blah.
Right. But the TIE Fighters don't look like that. Now, the TIE Fighters are now officially called that because they are twin ion engine ships.
Right.
TIE Fighter. But they were called that because in the same way that the X-Wings kind of look like an X and all the rest of it, they look like bow ties.
That's hilarious.
And as someone who loves a good bow tie, I love that.
Yeah. Otherwise, they would have to be like an H-Wing or something.
Yeah, exactly. I'm with you on all of those. My favorites got to be a little bit different. Cool. First of all, was the Y-Wings. Okay. I just always, like, even in that original movie, I just like, okay, the X-Wings get all the glory.
Right.
But look at like, it's, to me, it's like, you know, the X-Wing is like the running back. It's the flashy one. Yeah. The Y-Wing is like, it's me. It's, you know, it's the fullback. Okay. It's mostly going to block and do some damage. Right. But in all the early fighting games, like X-Wing on the IBM 386 or whatever, I always wanted to pilot a Y-Wing instead of an X-Wing. Yeah. So that's my first one. The Hammerhead Cruiser.
Oh, yeah. That's in Rogue One, right? This is awesome.
It's in Rogue One, but it's also in Clone Wars. Okay. Sorry, not in. It's in Rebels. And even before that, it was in some of the video games. Mm-hmm. Makes no sense whatsoever. It's all based on like momentum and stuff like that doesn't really exist in space.
Right.
But I guess it sort of does, just in different ways. But it was just like... It was so much fun watching this like tiny little ship like trying to push a Star Destroyer into another Star Destroyer.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I loved it. And then my third, also because this is probably one of the most ridiculous ships we've ever seen, the twin pod cloud cars. These are the ships that we see over Bespin. And we see them in a couple other places in Rebels. Yeah, it's like it's two pilots. It's basically like it's two ships that are attached with the engine in between them. Yeah. One of them is the pilot. The other one is a weapons person. Which, by the way, having your pilot significantly away from your center of gravity of your ship, a crime the B-Wing is also very, very guilty of, is very strange.
Right.
But it's just like it looks ridiculous. But when I watched Empire as a kid, they were so cool and they were so intimidating. And I think I had a toy of them when I was a young kid. Yeah. So, yeah. So.
I always picture them like almost like floating hearts in the clouds in like video games, you know.
Yeah.
Just like I'll give a couple honorable mentions that weren't there.
Please do.
The Bad Batch's ship, which is an Omicron class, which came out right around the same time as Omicron.
Yep.
Which seems
that was
like
hilarious.
Funny timing. And there was another one. I don't know. Whatever.
For me,
in Visions, there's this twin Star Destroyer with like some ridiculous engine power source in the middle. It's like in episode 3, I think. It's really weird, and it's cool looking and just ridiculous. Like, why would you build that?
In the Outward Bound novel, which is like, this is a deep, deep cut into Legends, but it's in. Although it has been mentioned in the regular canon, the Disney canon as well. It was basically this mission that a number of Jedi went on and disappeared, and we now know that's how they first encountered Thrawn's people and all that. But it was this mission to like go deep, deep beyond the known galaxy into other worlds, hence Outbound Flight, and it's where for people who've read the original Timothy Zahn books, Heir to the Empire, the Jedi who is a clone is the person he was a clone of, Janus Kaboth, was on this mission, and it's later revealed that like Sidious like encouraged this mission basically as a way to get rid of some of the Jedi he was most concerned about.
Oh, okay.
But the ship they use, it's only been drawn because it's never officially appeared on screen, only in books. But it's basically a number of these dreadnought cruisers, which were like big cruisers in the Republic era, that were then kind of like all like attached to the center fuselage that would have like tunnels that can control them.
Yeah.
It's someone like it sounds like what you would do with like a couple of toy ships you like rubber banded together to make a super ship, you know.
Right.
That was my honorable mention, and then also the I didn't want to do individual ships, but I couldn't find the official name of the class, but Boba Fett's ship.
Oh yeah,
referred to by some as Slave One.
Yeah. I mean that's its official name, but originally that they then stopped using. But
well, they'd always labeled it Boba Fett's ship on the merchandising. Like the idea they changed it was kind of false. But point being that yeah, because it never, like, I had that as a toy as well, and I always thought it flew in a different way, because it looks like it should fly kind of, it's like got a flat bottom, and then, like, these rounded things, so it looks like it flies sort of horizontally, but it actually, like, flips up and, like, flies vertically in a way that just was not what you would think it would do.
Yeah, it's like a shoe, but, like, the heel is the engine, basically. Yeah. Which, I mean, in Empire Strikes Back, that's where it first shows up.
Right. But I think, like, I'd seen that very young. I had the toy, and then I kind of forgot about it until I got Empire on video, like, years later.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, so,
those are actually my honorable mentions. Who are your other honorable mentions?
No, those are my honorable mentions. I was going to make a segue, which here on Twitch it's gonna be relevant. One of my favorite... Like this is just like a weird memory, but I was walking in Hamburg by a Lego store, and they had a. Why are you? I don't.
The Mets.
Oh, okay. No, that's cool. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I saw that. Yeah, that's great.
Folks, you're not going to get any more ads out of us. If you want to stop listening, go ahead. We're just rambling at this point. Go aheed.
No, I feel like being a spy might be a challenge. But you know, it's okay. Anyway, yeah, I was walking by a Lego store, and they had, you know, a Star Destroyer that was just, and I think it was a Super Star Destroyer because I think they had tiny little regular Star Destroyers next to it, but it, you know, it was like €400 or €300 or something, and now they're even more. But like some of the Lego models of these ships are just amazing and just make me want to get Lego again. And very shortly, when we raid our friend of the Superhero Ethics podcast, Will Freeland, Silver Dreamer, on Twitch, we will see a Millennium Falcon that is a lot of pieces in his background that he has assembled with Lego. Anyway, that's it. I'm done.
All right.
I have nothing more to say.
I think that's a good way to wrap up. So thank you all to those of us who bore through to the very end. As fans, be good to each other. May the Force be with you.